Now, many of us growing up would have heard the stories from parents and grandparents who lived through the war, the last big war. Well, stories of a time gone by, but stories that very sadly may come again.
Yeah, and should teach us too. With the US returning nuclear weapons to British soil and wars, of course, flaring up from Ukraine through the Middle East and beyond, war could very well be a reality. Maybe not in Britain, but for Britain.
Oh, it's not what you need, is it? So what's it like living through conflict? Well, joining us in the studio is Paul Minter, who served in the Household Cavalry and did several tours, and also from Ukraine, People's Deputy and MP, Inna Sovsun. Good to see you both this morning. Inna, can we start with you? Because obviously what the people of Ukraine are going through right now is the absolute horror of war. How does it shape a people, especially when you're a couple of years in, as you are now?
Well, I understand it is very difficult to imagine what it means to live through war. And if anyone would have asked me about that 2 years ago, I would not be able to explain what that is. Well, I will try to give a feeling of what that is to your audience here. I have a son. His name is Martin. He's 11 years old. He goes to school over here in Kiev. And he considers it to be a good day when there was no air raid alert and when he didn't have to go to the bomb shelter. And he's a lucky one because his school does have a bomb shelter inside the school itself. But multiple other schools, they just don't have the space in the school to get all the kids there. So there are unfortunately many schools where kids go to school like every other week. And every other week, the second week, they would stay home and study online just because the bomb shelter capacity in the individual school is not big enough to fit in all the kids in the school. And that is for those like us who are living here in Kiev. But if you go to my native city of Kharkiv, the situation over there is so much worse. Kids over there who are still staying in Kharkiv was a big city, it was over 1 million people living there. Kids over there who stay with their parents, they go to schools in the underground. They arranged classes in the underground because it's just not safe to be anywhere else in the city. So that is the daily reality for us here.
Okay, Inna, thank you for that. I was just going to say that, Paul, it's a very different scenario, isn't it, for those people, civilians who are living through conflict and all that entails. But then you look at the military side and people like yourself who've been actively involved in conflict. And we can't underestimate, can we, the horror of war and what people who've been in your position actually go through.
Yes, absolutely. It's very different for everyone involved, whether you're a soldier on either side or if you're a civilian. The comprehension or understanding of what each go through is very difficult. But as a soldier, it's very different from a civilian who is just thrown into that, and it's a complete shock. For us, we joined a service, an organisation to go out and do these sorts of things, go around the world and peacekeep and help with humanitarian aid and war. And we trained very highly for that. But one thing is, what you can't comprehend or you can't train for is the amount of high alertness, the constant barrage of fighting, and the atrocities that you come across whilst you're out there. And it is constant, it's every single day.
Yes, I imagine if you're trained, as you were, you're trained to do a job, but it doesn't get you away from the fact that it's relentless if you're in a war zone, isn't it? It's the sound, it's the hearing things going off and trying to judge where they are. That gets to you, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It can't not. Any sort of trauma can happen to someone within a few seconds. But when you're elongating that trauma, which is what war is, no matter how you perceive it, it is trauma. When you elongate that for 5, 6, 7, 9 months at a time, over and over again, it is going to have some sort of consequences on you. But we all joined up for that reason. We all want to help people. We all feel very proud of what we do. And it's a sacrifice that us soldiers, airmen, everyone else, that they make initially. They make that sacrifice and they know that consequences may come from that.
A final thought, Inna, from you on this one. Do you maintain, and your family, and indeed the civilians within Ukraine, do you still maintain hope? Is that important?
Well, it is very difficult because it is like the war itself has been dragging on for 10 years. The big scale war has lasted for 2 years, but the war itself is 10 years. And one thing that I keep in my mind, my son is 11 now. When the war started in 2014, he was a year and a half. So I don't want this to drag on up until he will be 18 and he will be drafted to serve. That is my strongest wish. And that is what we are fighting for. It is extremely difficult for me. I am a civilian. I live in Kyiv, but my partner, my loved one, is on the front line. And that is the reality that is dragging on me every second. Every second I have to worry about him surviving what he is going through and understanding that other colleague here said that he will not be the same when he comes back after this war. But there is hope, just because we cannot lose hope, because there are kids that we are doing this for. There is, and then there is the scary reality of losing. We cannot afford this to happen. Russia coming over here, taking over Ukraine is not something that is acceptable. Thus, we have to continue.
Yeah, it is terrible to think that your son has spent his whole childhood only knowing war, isn't it? Inna, Paul, thank you so much.